Welcome to my channel, my dear friends. Before I begin, please comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Your support means everything to me, and today I want to share a story that still shakes my soul whenever I think about it. This is not just any story, it is my story. A story of trust, betrayal, fear, and a lesson that I hope will protect others from making the mistake I almost made. It was a Monday morning, quiet and ordinary, or so I thought. My son called me early, his voice unusually sweet. "Mom, we need you to come to the bank with us." "Just a small formality," he said. I didn't question him. He was my son, my pride, my blood. Why should I suspect anything wrong? When I reached the bank, I sensed something unusual. My son's wife was already waiting at the entrance. She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that warms a mother's heart. It was sharp, calculating. She gripped my arm firmly, guiding me inside as though I might run away if given the chance. We walked up to the counter. My son pulled out a folder and slipped a pile of papers in front of me. He handed me a pen, lowering his voice. "Just sign, Mom." His words sent a shiver down my spine. There was no tenderness in his tone, no love, only pressure. His wife leaned close to me, her fingers digging into my shoulder. "Don't make this difficult. Just sign. It's for your own good." I looked down at the papers, my vision blurring for a moment. And then I saw it, the words that made my blood run cold: transfer of ownership. This was no formality. This was betrayal. My own son wanted me to sign away my house, my savings, everything I had built with a lifetime of sacrifice. I felt the sting of tears behind my eyes, but I forced myself to stay calm. I smiled faintly, pretending to go along. "Of course," I whispered, picking up the pen. My hands trembled, not from weakness but from fear. But I had prepared for this. My heart had whispered warnings long before today. In my handbag was a folded note I had written the night before, just in case. Slowly, carefully, I slipped it to the cashier while pretending to adjust the papers. The note said only 5 words. "Help, this is not my choice." The cashier glanced down, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. She understood. She nodded ever so slightly and passed the note toward the bank manager. Meanwhile, my son and his wife laughed and smiled, posing for the surveillance camera as though this was a happy family moment. But then the atmosphere changed. The manager stood up, his face stern. He looked at me, then at my son. "Excuse me," he said, his voice firm. "We need to pause this transaction." A loud click followed. The bank's main door locked. My son froze. My heart thundered in my chest. And at that moment I realized this was only the beginning. Inside the manager's office, I finally let out the breath I had been holding. My hands were trembling, my heart racing so hard I thought it might burst. The manager handed me a glass of water. "Drink this," he said gently. "You're safe here." But was I really safe? Because on the other side of that door, my son was waiting. My son, the same boy whose tiny fingers once clutched mine, who once cried in my lap, now stood outside plotting how to strip me of everything. I wiped my tears, ashamed of how weak I felt. "Why are they doing this to me?" I whispered. The manager sighed. "Greed blinds people, ma'am. I've seen it before, but it always hurts the most when it comes from family." At that moment, we both heard raised voices from outside. My son was arguing with security, demanding to see me. His wife's shrill voice pierced through the walls. "She's old. She doesn't understand anything. We're just helping her sign." I closed my eyes, the words cutting deeper than any knife. Old, helpless, that's what I had become in their eyes. Not a mother, not a woman who had sacrificed her entire life for them. Just an obstacle. The manager picked up the phone and called the local authorities. His voice was calm but firm. "Yes, this is urgent. We have a potential case of elder coercion. Please send someone immediately." When he put the phone down, he looked at me again. "Help is coming. Just stay strong." But my son wasn't going to wait. Suddenly there was a loud bang against the office door. "Mom," he shouted. "Why are you doing this? Don't you trust me? Don't you love me?" His words stabbed into my chest. Trust, love, the very things I had given him endlessly. Did he really believe love meant surrendering everything? I stayed silent, clutching the edge of the chair. The manager signaled security to hold the door. Another bang followed, then another. His wife's voice joined in, venomous and sharp. "If you don't sign today, don't ever call yourself his mother again." Tears streamed down my face, but this time they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of strength. Something inside me hardened. I had given them my love, my care, my entire life. But I would not give them my dignity. The sound of sirens faintly echoed in the distance. My son must have heard it too because his banging stopped. A heavy silence filled the bank lobby. Minutes later, 2 police officers walked in. They spoke to the manager, who pointed toward the door. Slowly, the officers pushed it open, and my son stood there, his face pale with rage. His wife tried to explain, her voice trembling with fake innocence. But the officers silenced her with a wave of the hand, and in that moment, I realized something painful yet liberating. Sometimes, the people you protect the most are the very ones you must protect yourself from. The police officers separated us immediately. One of them asked me to stay inside the manager's office while the other stepped out to question my son and his wife. Through the glass, I could see my son's face twisting with frustration, his hands waving wildly as he tried to convince them that this was just a misunderstanding. But the more he spoke, the clearer his guilt became. His wife clung to his arm, whispering furiously in his ear, urging him to keep insisting. I could read her lips. She'll ruin everything if she doesn't sign. Those words burned into me. How could she speak of me that way? I had welcomed her into my home, treated her like my own daughter, and now she saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to wealth. The manager leaned toward me, his voice calm. Ma'am, the police will take your statement. Be honest and clear. This is your chance to protect yourself. I nodded, though my body trembled. Fear was still in my veins. But something stronger had begun to rise in me. A sense of justice. A desire to finally stand up for myself. A knock came at the door. One of the officers entered, his notebook ready. Ma'am, can you tell us what happened here? I swallowed hard, my throat dry, but I spoke. I told them everything. The phone call that morning. The way they led me into the bank. The painful grip on my shoulder. The demand to sign without explanation. The note I had written in secret. My voice shook, but I forced every word out. The officer listened carefully, writing it all down. When I finished, he gave me a reassuring nod. You did the right thing, ma'am. We'll make sure you're not forced into anything. Meanwhile, my son's voice grew louder outside. She's confused. She doesn't know what she's talking about. We're just helping her. But the officer's calm reply silenced him. If she's confused, then why did she write a note asking for help? The color drained from my son's face. His wife's mask of confidence slipped, revealing the desperation underneath. At that moment, something inside me broke, not in weakness, but in finality. The illusion I had carried all my life, that my children would always protect me, shattered into pieces. When the officers asked if I wanted to press charges, I hesitated. A storm of emotions raged inside me. Love, betrayal, sorrow, and anger. He was my son, but he was also my betrayer. I don't want to destroy him, I whispered, but I don't want him near my property again. Ever. The officer nodded. We can issue a restraining order that will legally keep them away from your finances. It wasn't justice in the full sense, but it was protection. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt a small flame of safety flicker inside me. As they escorted my son and his wife out of the bank, he turned back one last time, his eyes full of anger and something darker, resentment. And I knew this battle was not over. The police car pulled away from the bank with my son and his wife inside, but the echo of their anger still lingered in my heart. I stood at the glass door, watching as the vehicle disappeared into traffic. My hands felt heavy, my body weak, but inside me, something else stirred, a hollow ache I could not ignore. I had imagined betrayal many times in my life, but never like this. I always thought strangers could cheat me. Neighbors could gossip, friends could disappoint. But my own blood, my son, it was a wound deeper than any knife could cut. The manager placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Ma'am, you're safe now, but I advise you to take extra precautions. Change your account passwords, update your legal documents, and make sure everything is secure. I nodded numbly. His words made sense, but my heart was not ready to process them. I kept hearing my son's voice in my ears. Don't you trust me? Don't you love me? Trust, love, the very foundations of motherhood. I had given both without question. And now those gifts had been twisted into weapons against me. That night I returned home alone. The house that once felt warm and full of laughter now seemed like a stranger's shelter. Every corner whispered memories of my children's childhood, their toys, their laughter, even their fights. I sat in the living room staring at the family photographs on the wall. My son's smiling face looked back at me, innocent and pure. A child who once clung to me as though I were his whole world. "How did we get here?" I whispered into the silence. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but I did not wipe them away. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my sorrow. This was not just about money or property. This was about love that had died, trust that had been broken beyond repair. Later that evening, the phone rang. My heart leapt, hoping it was someone checking on me, offering comfort. But when I picked it up, a familiar voice hissed through the line. "Why did you do this to us?" It was my son. My hand shook as I held the receiver. "Do this to you? You tried to take everything from me." His voice grew colder. "We only wanted what's ours. You wouldn't have survived much longer anyway. It would have been better if you just signed." My breath caught in my throat. Better? If I had just signed? Was I nothing more than a signature to him? "I am your mother," I said, my voice breaking. A bitter laugh echoed through the line. "Not anymore." Then the line went dead. I stood frozen, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. At that moment I realized this was not just greed. This was war, and somehow I had to find the strength to fight it. That night I could not sleep. Every creak of the house, every rustle of wind outside the window made me jump. I had lived in this home for decades, but now it felt unsafe, as though shadows had turned against me. I replayed my son's words again and again. Not anymore. Those two words cut deeper than everything else. He wasn't just after money. He was cutting me out of his life, erasing me as though I had never been his mother. By morning, I decided I could not face this alone. I called my lawyer, a man who had handled my small property matters for years. When I told him what had happened, he sighed heavily. "You're not the first, ma'am. Families can be dangerous when money is involved. Come to my office today. We'll make sure your property and accounts are protected." I agreed, though fear gripped me. Leaving the house felt dangerous. What if my son was waiting? What if his wife followed me? I wrapped my shawl tightly around me and stepped outside. The street was quiet, too quiet. As I walked toward the gate, I noticed something strange. My son's car parked a short distance away. My heart dropped. The window rolled down, and there he was. His eyes were bloodshot, his expression filled with anger. His wife sat beside him, whispering in his ear like a snake. "Going somewhere, Mom?" He called out, mocking me. I froze. My neighbor's curtains twitched, but no one came out. Fear rooted me in place. "Leave me alone," I managed to say. His wife leaned forward. "You're making a big mistake. If you think the police will protect you forever, you're wrong. Sign the property over, and this ends." I clutched my bag tighter. Inside were the documents the lawyer had asked me to bring. My entire life's proof of ownership was in that bag. If they got hold of it, everything would be lost. Summoning courage, I walked quickly past the car, ignoring their voices. My son slammed his hand against the steering wheel, honking the horn in frustration. I didn't look back. At the lawyer's office, I finally exhaled. He welcomed me in, took the documents, and immediately began the process of securing everything under legal protection. Wills, deeds, accounts, all tightened with restrictions. Now, even if they try, they can't touch your assets without your full consent, he assured me. Relief washed over me, but only for a moment, because deep inside, I knew my son wouldn't give up so easily. He wasn't just after property anymore. His pride was wounded, his anger was boiling, and I had become his enemy. When I returned home that evening, I found something chilling. The gate was unlocked. I was sure I had locked it in the morning. I stepped inside cautiously, and there on my front porch lay a torn family photograph. My son had ripped it in half. A warning, a message. This fight was far from over. I picked up the torn photograph with trembling hands. It was a picture from happier times, my son's wedding day. I was standing beside him, smiling proudly, believing I was giving him a new life, a family, a partner. Now that same photograph had been ripped right through the middle, separating me from him. I felt my knees weaken. This was no accident. He wanted me to know he had been here, inside my home, close enough to touch the very things I held dear. That night, I double-checked every lock, every window. I sat with the lights on, clutching my phone, ready to dial the police at the first sound. Sleep came in short, broken pieces, each one ending with me waking in fear. By morning, exhaustion weighed on me, but so did determination. I refused to be a silent victim. I went back to the police station and showed them the torn photograph. The officer who had helped me before frowned deeply. "This is intimidation," he said. We'll add this to the case file. Don't worry, we'll increase patrols near your house. It gave me some comfort, but only a little. Because I knew my son. Once his pride was wounded, he became reckless. And now, with his wife fueling the fire, there was no telling how far he might go. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. Every time the phone rang, my heart jumped. Sometimes it was silent calls, sometimes whispers of threats. Once, I picked up and heard his wife's voice. "You can't hide behind police forever. One day you'll be alone again." Her words crawled into my mind at night, making me doubt my own strength. Then one evening, as I was preparing dinner, I heard footsteps outside. My blood ran cold. I crept to the window and peeked through the curtains. A shadow moved quickly along the side of my house. I froze. Should I call the police? Should I shout? My instincts told me to stay silent. I watched as the figure stopped near my gate, crouching. The faint glow of a lighter flickered in the dark. My heart nearly stopped. Were they trying to set fire to something? Before I could react, the sound of a police siren pierced the night. The shadow bolted, disappearing into the darkness. The patrol car slowed outside my house, its lights flashing. The officers stepped out, checking the area, but whoever it was had already fled. I stood at the doorway, shaken but grateful. If the police had not come at that exact moment, what would have happened? The officers searched and found a small bottle near the gate. The smell of gasoline still strong inside it. My knees gave out, and I collapsed onto the porch. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was an attempt to destroy me, perhaps even kill me. And the cruelest part of all was knowing that the hands behind it likely belonged to the very child I once loved more than my own life. The smell of gasoline lingered in the air long after the police left. I sat alone in my living room, staring at the half-burned matchstick they had found near the gate. My hands shook as I held it, a small piece of wood, yet capable of ending everything I had built. The officers had promised to investigate, but I knew the truth already. Who else could it be? Who else had a reason to see me ruined? My son and his wife, the two people I had once trusted more than anyone. The next morning, the police called me in to give a formal statement. I sat in the small station office, the fan creaking above me, while the officer recorded every detail. "Ma'am," he said gently, "are you certain your son is behind this?" I hesitated. The word son still carried too much weight, but I forced myself to speak. "Yes, he is the only one who would go this far. He wants me to sign everything over. He doesn't see me as his mother anymore, only as an obstacle." The officer nodded gravely. "If we can prove his involvement, this will become a criminal case. Attempted arson, elder abuse, coercion. It will not be easy for you, but it may be necessary." I swallowed hard. The thought of my own son facing prison made me sick, but the thought of him burning me alive in my own home was worse. That evening, the police called again. They had brought my son in for questioning. I felt a wave of emotions, fear, sorrow, guilt, and a strange bitter relief. I was asked to come to the station. My heart pounded as I walked into the interrogation room. He sat there, his hands cuffed, his eyes full of rage. His wife wasn't with him, but her influence was written all over his face. When he saw me, he sneered. "So this is what you've become? Running to strangers to fight your battles? Mom, you're pathetic." Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to look at him. "Why, son? Why would you try to hurt me? I gave you everything I had. I loved you more than life itself." His voice was cold, almost unrecognizable. "You think love pays bills? You think love buys houses and cars? You've been sitting on wealth while we struggle. That property should have been mine long ago. You're just too stubborn to let go." My heart shattered, but I stayed firm. "That house was built with your father's sweat and my sacrifice. It is not a toy for you to destroy. If you wanted help, you only had to ask. But instead, you chose betrayal." For a moment, his eyes softened, almost as if my words reached the little boy I once knew. But then, just as quickly, his wife's poison seemed to return to him. He leaned forward and hissed, "This isn't over. You may have won today, but I'll make sure you regret it." The officer beside him slammed the table. "Enough! Do you realize these are threats against your own mother?" Silence fell. My son looked away, his jaw clenched. I left the station that night broken. But one thing had become clear. The battle ahead would not just be about property or safety. The walk back home from the police station felt heavier than any burden I had carried before. The night air was cool, but inside me burned a storm of emotions I couldn't calm. I had faced my son, looked into his eyes, and found nothing of the boy I once raised. Only greed, anger, and bitterness remained. At home, I sat by the window, staring at the quiet street. The police had promised to patrol more frequently, but their presence could not guard me from the ache in my heart. What mother wishes to see her son in handcuffs? What mother wishes to hear threats instead of love from her own blood? But I knew now that wishing for the past would not change the present. I had to protect myself. The next morning, the investigating officer visited me again. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried the weight of difficult truths. Ma'am, we've reviewed the evidence. The gasoline bottle, the torn photograph, the threats, it's strong enough to press criminal charges. But the final decision must be yours. I froze. My chest tightened as though someone had bound it with ropes. My son's future now rested in my hands. If I said yes, he would face court, maybe prison. If I said no, he would be free. Free to come back, free to try again. I turned my gaze to the family photographs still hanging on my wall. His childhood smile stared back at me, innocent, loving, trusting. That boy was gone, yet my heart still longed for him. I don't know, I whispered. He is my son, but he is also my enemy now. How can a mother decide such a thing? The officer leaned forward gently. You're not choosing between love and punishment. You're choosing between survival and danger. If you don't act now, he may try again, and next time, the police might not arrive in time. His words struck me with cold truth. Tears filled my eyes, and I nodded slowly. Do it, file the charges. But not because I hate him, because I can't let him destroy me. The officer placed his hand over mine. That is a mother's courage, protecting herself, even when her heart is breaking. Days turned into weeks as the legal process began. My son was released on bail, but a restraining order kept him away from my home. Still, I never felt truly safe. I knew his anger too well. He had lost control of me once, and he would not forgive that easily. One evening, as I locked my doors for the night, I found an envelope pushed under the gate. My heart sank as I picked it up. Inside was a single sheet of paper with messy handwriting I knew too well. It read, "You can hide behind the law, but blood always finds its way. You are not free from me, not yet." My hands trembled as I read those words. This was no longer just about property. This was turning into a nightmare where survival meant staying one step ahead of my own child, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep running. The letter shook me to my core. For hours I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at those words written in my son's hand. Blood always finds its way. It was more than a threat. It was a promise. And from the boy I once nursed in my arms, it felt like poison slowly filling my veins. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every brush of wind against the window, every distant bark of a dog felt like a warning. I kept imagining shadows outside my door, waiting for the right moment to strike. By morning I decided enough was enough. Fear had ruled me too long. I went back to the bank, the very place where this nightmare began. The manager greeted me with gentle concern, offering me a chair in his office. His voice was kind yet steady as he said, "You are not alone in this. Madam, we'll protect what belongs to you, but you must also protect yourself." I nodded. "I'm trying, but he's my son. He won't stop. He thinks everything I own is already his." The manager leaned back, folding his hands. "Then perhaps it's time to make sure he cannot take anything from you at all. There are legal ways, trusts, wills, protections that can ensure your safety." I agreed to let him guide me. For hours we worked through documents, locking my property into a trust that my son could not touch. I signed papers with a heavy heart, each stroke of the pen like a final farewell to the family I once dreamed of passing it down to. Walking out of the bank, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. My possessions were safe, but my soul still carried the weight of betrayal. That evening, as I sipped tea by the window, I heard a soft knock at the door. My heart leapt. Was it him? Slowly I approached, holding my breath. When I opened it, a woman stood there. Her face was familiar, my daughter-in-law. Her eyes glistened with tears. "Mother," she whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't know he would go this far." I stiffened. The same woman who once dug her nails into my shoulder at the bank was now standing before me, broken and trembling. "Why are you here?" I asked coldly. She lowered her gaze. "Because I can't live with him anymore. He's changed. He talks of revenge, of burning everything down. He's not the man I married. He's dangerous." And I thought, maybe you should know. Her confession pierced me deeper than any knife. My son had not only lost me, he was losing everyone around him. As she spoke, I saw in her eyes the same fear that lived in mine. For the first time, I realized this battle was bigger than me. My son's greed was consuming everyone, and if no one stopped him, he would destroy us all. And in that moment, I knew the next move would determine not just my survival, but the legacy of my entire family. I led my daughter-in-law inside, though my heart battled between anger and pity. She sat at my table, her hands trembling as she gripped the teacup I gave her. For a moment, silence hung between us, heavy and fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Finally, she whispered, "He isn't the man you raised. He speaks of you as if you're an enemy. He says your life is nothing without your property, and that if he takes it, he'll finally be free." Her voice cracked. "But it's worse now. He's planning something big, something dangerous. He doesn't want the law to just force you. He wants to make you disappear." My chest tightened. "Disappear? What do you mean?" She glanced nervously toward the door, as though he might appear any second. "I heard him on the phone. He was talking to someone who sounded ruthless. He said if you wouldn't sign, then money could make things easier. A fire, an accident, maybe even something worse." Her words sent a chill through my bones. My son, my own flesh and blood, was plotting my death. Tears burned my eyes, but I held them back. I could not let fear paralyze me. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked sharply. Her face crumpled. "Because I can't live in that house anymore. Every night he talks in his sleep about taking everything from you. He laughs in his dreams, as if victory is close. And I realized, if I don't warn you, then I'm no better than him." I studied her carefully. She looked broken, but sincere. For the first time, I saw not an enemy at the bank, but another victim of his greed. Still, anger boiled inside me. "You helped him that day. You dug your nails into me, forced me to the table." She lowered her head in shame. "Yes, and I regret it every moment. But I thought it was only about property. I thought he was just being stubborn. I never imagined he would go this far. Please believe me, I'm trying to make it right." Her words echoed in the hollow of my heart. I wanted to hate her, to send her away, but I couldn't. I saw in her the reflection of myself, trapped, betrayed, desperate for escape. At last I spoke. "If what you say is true, then the law must know. This is no longer just family conflict. This is a crime waiting to happen." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'll testify. I'll tell them everything I heard." That night I called the police again. The officer listened carefully as I relayed her confession. His voice grew firm. "Ma'am, this confirms what we suspected. Your son is escalating. We'll increase surveillance, and with her statement, we can open a stronger case." As I hung up the phone, my heart broke once more. I was not just a mother anymore. I was a survivor, preparing to fight against my own child. And deep inside, a question haunted me. Had my love blinded me so much that I had raised the very hand now raised against me? The days that followed felt like walking across thin ice. Every step cautious, every sound amplified. The police increased their patrols. But even with their presence, I felt the danger breathing down my neck. My son's shadow lingered everywhere, in the creak of the staircase, in the rattle of the windows, in the silence between ticking clocks. One evening, the officer visited me with a plan. He sat across from me, his tone calm but serious. "Ma'am," he began, "with your daughter-in-law's testimony, we have enough to move forward. But to make sure he cannot escape justice, we need to catch him in the act. We'll set up a controlled trap." My pulse quickened. "A trap? What kind?" He leaned in. "We've learned he has been contacting dangerous people, likely to harm you. We'll let him think his plan is working. You'll go to the bank one more time, as if signing the last of your documents. But our officers will be hidden nearby. If he attempts anything, we'll arrest him immediately." My breath caught in my throat. The bank, the place where this nightmare began, would now be the battlefield for its end. That night I barely slept. My mind replayed memories of my son, his first steps, his laughter when he played in the yard, his tiny hand gripping mine on his first day of school. Could that boy truly have turned into the man plotting my death? Dawn came too soon. I dressed in simple clothes and whispered a prayer, my hands trembling as I folded them together. When I arrived at the bank, the manager greeted me warmly, but I could see the tension in his eyes. He knew. Everyone there knew. I sat at the familiar desk, papers neatly stacked in front of me. My heart pounded so hard I thought the whole building could hear it. Minutes later, the door creaked open. My son walked in. His eyes were cold, sharp, calculating, a stranger's eyes. Behind him, 2 men lingered at the entrance, their posture threatening, their hands hidden in their jackets. "Mother," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Finally ready to do the right thing?" I swallowed hard, glancing at the hidden officers who blended with the quiet crowd. I knew one wrong move could mean disaster. "Yes," I whispered, sliding the pen into my hand. "I'm ready." He leaned closer, his voice low, venomous. "You should have done this long ago. You made me wait, suffer, fight. But today it ends. Today, you give me what is mine." For a moment, the room spun. I saw not my son, but a predator. And in that instant, I understood. Love could no longer blind me. This was survival. Just as I lifted the pen, the bank manager subtly pressed a button beneath the desk. The doors locked with a heavy clang, and shouts erupted as officers stormed forward. The trap had been sprung. My son's face twisted in rage as officers grabbed his arms, forcing him down. The 2 men by the door reached for their weapons. But within seconds, they too were disarmed. And there I sat, pen still trembling in my hand, watching as my son screamed curses at me. "Traitor! You're not my mother!" he roared as they dragged him away. But deep inside, I knew the truth. I was his mother, and this was the consequence of the choices he had made. The bank was silent after the storm. Papers lay scattered across the floor, chairs toppled in the struggle. I sat frozen in my seat, the pen still clutched in my trembling hand. My heart pounded, but not from fear anymore, from grief. My son had been dragged away in handcuffs, screaming at me, cursing my name. His voice echoed in my ears long after the police van pulled away. "You're not my mother." The words cut deeper than any knife. But as I looked around, at the manager who risked himself, at the officers who acted quickly, at my daughter-in-law who stood pale and trembling in the corner, I realized something. No, I had not betrayed my son. He had betrayed me. The following weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. The police built their case, and I was called to give testimony. Walking into the courtroom felt like stepping into another battlefield. My hands shook as I swore to tell the truth, my voice quivering as I recounted every detail: the bank incident, the threats, the gasoline bottle, the letter. And then they brought him in, my son, dressed in prison clothes, shackled at the wrists. He avoided my eyes at first, but when he finally looked at me, there was no warmth left, only hatred. The prosecutor laid out the charges: attempted coercion, conspiracy to commit fraud, threats to life, and intent to harm. Each word felt like a stone crashing down on the boy I once cradled. When it was his turn to speak, he spat venom. "She lies. She's turning everyone against me. She wants to keep everything for herself while her own son suffers." I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my cheeks. The judge listened patiently, but I could see in his face. He wasn't convinced. Evidence spoke louder than rage. Then came the moment I dreaded most. The judge asked me directly, "Madam, do you wish to proceed with full charges against your son?" The courtroom grew silent. My breath caught. Every eye was on me. My son's glare burned into me like fire. In that moment, my soul tore in two. The mother inside me wanted to beg for mercy, to shield him even from his own sins. But the woman who had survived his greed knew the truth. Mercy without justice would only lead to more destruction. I raised my head, voice trembling but clear. "Yes, Your Honor, I do." Gasps rippled through the room. My son's face twisted in fury. "You'll regret this," he shouted as guards restrained him. But deep down, I knew I had done what was necessary. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I could not let love destroy me. As the gavel struck, signaling the continuation of the trial, I felt both broken and strong. For the first time in years, I realized. Months passed after the verdict. The storm of courts and testimonies slowly faded, leaving behind a heavy silence. My son was now in prison, and though the law had protected me, my heart still carried invisible wounds. One morning I received a letter. The handwriting was shaky, uncertain, but it was his. For a long time, I couldn't bring myself to open it. My hands trembled as I finally unfolded the paper. "Mother," it began, "I hate you. I hate what you've done. You let them chain me like an animal. You chose strangers over your own blood." I read on, each line cutting deeper. His words were filled with anger, denial, bitterness. Not once did he admit his guilt. Not once did he ask for forgiveness. He ended the letter with a warning. "When I'm free, I'll take back what is mine." I let the paper fall from my hands, tears blurring my vision. My son was alive, but I had lost him long before the prison bars closed around him. For days, I struggled with the weight of it all. Should I visit him? Should I write back? Or should I let the silence between us remain forever? Finally, I gathered my courage and went to the prison. When I saw him sitting behind the glass, his face hardened, eyes cold, I felt both love and pain collide inside me. I picked up the phone receiver and whispered, "Son, I came not to fight, not to argue. I came to tell you something only a mother can say. I still love you. But love does not mean I will let you destroy me." He didn't speak at first. He just glared, his jaw tight. Then he hissed, "You're weak." I shook my head slowly. No, for the first time in my life, I am strong. Strong enough to say no to the child I love. Strong enough to survive the betrayal of my own blood. Strong enough to protect myself. The silence stretched between us. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a crack in his armor, the slightest flicker of doubt in his eyes. But then he turned away, ending the meeting. Walking out of the prison gates, I felt a strange peace wash over me. My heart was broken, yes, but I was no longer afraid. I had faced the darkest storm of motherhood and survived. And I knew my story carried a lesson. Greed can blind, betrayal can wound, but courage, even in the heart of a broken mother, can save. I no longer prayed for him to love me. I prayed for him to one day find the truth. And as for me, I chose to live, not in fear, not in regret, but in strength. Because in the end, survival is also love. Love for oneself.